Welcome to this webinar. This is the first webinar in a multi-part series that we'll actually do here at Draft.dev, where we talk about, building out good content strategy, and especially, now in the age of AI, you might have seen just this week new announcements at Google I/O. This is a very, very interesting time. A lot of things are happening, right? And it's really important to stay on top of the game and stay informed and keep true to processes and frameworks that work, help us understand our audience, etc. So I'm super excited to, over the next few weeks and months, have these multiple webinars where I walk through our philosophy here at Draft.dev. That's been built out over the last decade, basically. That's helped many businesses create lots of revenue. So yeah, let's jump in. So part one, this webinar is all about how to set up a content marketing engine in the age of AI. So I'll talk through the prerequisites and goals of building an effective content marketing engine for technical audiences. So that means like the tech stack, the strategy, some tried and trusted frameworks that help you reverse engineer your production and your publishing plan, right? I'll definitely also address the elephant in the room, right? AI, what's happening with AI overviews and zero-click content and stuff like that. So just super quickly, who am I? Why do I feel qualified talking about this? My background is in advertising marketing. I co-founded a tech startup in 2012, scaled it to millions in annual recurring revenue, and then sold it in 2018. At that point, our blog drove over 1 million unique visitors per year to our website and generated about 1,500 marketing qualified leads per month. And, we had a great inbound channel. After selling the company, I started consulting and basically taught and implemented the frameworks I had built in my own company in many companies, from small startups just getting started to companies that made, triple digit in millions of ARR. So, tried and tested, works for small companies, not with a lot of budget, that just want to get started. Also works for companies that have a marketing team of 20, 30 people, right? It's all about getting those leads in, turning them into revenue for the business. So let's dive in. What are we going to talk about today? So first of all, right, this is really important. Content marketing needs to drive revenue. It's all great and good to publish content, but the end goal obviously is to create revenue for the business. And also we owe it to the business to be able to understand how our content impacts the bottom line, right? And this doesn't have to be overly crazy with like complicated attribution models or something like that. It can be really simple, but we want to be able to predictably show the business what we will do and also prove that what we have done had ROI, right? Created dollars in the bank account, right? So there are a few things that a good content marketing engine needs. One of them is a content management system. You might think, oh, man, this is super basic, but bear with me. I'm going to talk a little bit about why, especially in the age of AI, a good content marketing system is very important. But, the key points here definitely are you want to remove friction for non-technical people. It's crazy if you need like a technical resource in your company, in your team, that helps you just get, for example, a blog post live, right? You don't want to be reliant on a front-end developer. I assume most of you don't have a dedicated front-end developer on your team, so it's really important that non-technical people can preview, schedule, and publish content in the way the best practices require us to publish the content. More about what those best practices are later. Then we're going to talk about how to set up and use analytics. As mentioned, a lot of stuff has happened recently, and AI is impacting a lot what we can look at and what we should look at. But I'm going to talk about the traditional metrics and then metrics that you need in the AI era. Then we're going to talk about collecting leads in your database, right? So in the end, what we're doing with content marketing is it's all about building relationship and providing value over time. We don't want to be spammy, right? I mean, especially with the technical audience, right? But in general, we want to be good people, right? So don't spam. We want to build a relationship and provide value over time. And we want to create leads. So that means, we get some traffic to our website. How can we start building a relationship with them, right? So a lead could be a product sign up if you're in a product-led growth motion. It can be marketing qualified leads that later turn into sales qualified leads that a sales team works. But it can also mean just, practitioners, software engineers, trying out your sandbox or dev environment to test your solution, right? And I'll walk through a few options for CRMs, because nowadays there's varied options that are, from can do everything to just the bare necessities, but you can get them really on a low budget. So there's no excuse not to capture leads. And then I'm going to also talk about setting up retargeting audiences. And this is really exciting to me because you can be very creative with retargeting audiences. And also they can help us respect our audiences by not spamming them when they already, did what we want them to do, basically, right? It's all about being respectful and not spamming people. And also retargeting, if you set it up well, can be very cheap and cost effective, which is exciting. Again, if you are just starting out with content marketing or you're on a very small team, you don't even have a defined budget yet, you still can do this on like a extremely low budget. But if you have more budget, you can do many more things. And that's where it gets really exciting. And last but not least, I'm going to talk about creating a content calendar. And this is incredibly powerful, but also very simple. It does for us the main thing we need to do in content marketing, which is act and not react. It allows us to plan ahead and, know what's coming and not be so gung-ho. Oh my God, we've got a new piece. Let's publish it. But really, plan months into the future, and everything is orchestrated and everybody on the team, knows what's going to happen. And there's a calm because we act and do not react. So let's dive in. But before we dive in, just to be clear, everything I'm going to talk about here has as is its base content, a blog post. Content marketing can also be, you publish podcasts and everything, but we're going to talk about blog posts as a base content because it's a great content type, right? You can repurpose it to social media posts and many other things. And that's what I'm talking about when I say, let's publish some content. I mean, in this webinar, blog posts. Okay, cool. So first of all, right, content marketing needs to drive revenue. There's many businesses that we have conversations with. They come to us and they say, I know I should publish content because our audience are software engineers and we need to earn their respect. So I need to publish content. But that's where it ends for them, right? There's no plan and no structure. And we then come in and help them define the content strategy and explain to them and really walk them through and consult them on how to execute on that, right? But really, content marketing needs to be a consistent, predictable growth channel. And it can be that. It's not magic, right? We want to avoid this like inspiration strikes approach, right? I know as a software engineer in your company has an idea and feels really motivated to write this article. Great, we have a piece. Now let's immediately publish it. And then there's a drought for 2 months, and then there's another piece from another software engineer, right? That's not it. We want to follow a strategic plan, stay disciplined, and carry out the processes that we know that work. And so, really, this might sound harsh, but oftentimes marketers that fail to succeed at content marketing just lack the processes and systems and frameworks and the discipline. And so when I'm talking about, let's build the content calendar, this sounds so simple, but that is the thing that helps you stay disciplined. And when I say, let's set up a content management system in a specific way so there's no friction, that is the part with the processes that we are not reliant on somebody else, on another team to help us get our work done, right? And these things might sound very basic and simple, but they are the key to a successful content marketing production. And so all of this is especially important nowadays because this is some somewhat recent data, but AI overviews, zero-click content. I'm sure everybody right now is somewhat freaking out, and there's this uncertainty. How is this all impacting our marketing, our overall marketing strategy, not just even content marketing strategy, right? What's going to happen, right? And yes, I mean, the data is clear, right? These AI overviews and zero-click content is definitely biting into the top of the funnel for sure, right? You can see the number here in terms of the technical content and the drop we see in click-through rates, right? So it is even more important nowadays to have a structured approach that you can execute for a long period of time, because this is all, stay in the game, stay consistent, and over time you will grow, right? But yes, like no beating around the bush. There's a clear need to adapt for the AI area. And there's also an opportunity. It's fun, right? Of course, it's a little daunting, but it's fun. So our responsibility is to be proactive, be predictable, and have measurable results that we can tell and report to the business, right? Content marketing is not an art. It's a science. Yes, you can be creative on top of that, but really it takes robust systems, processes, and discipline. And when you have that in place and keep executing for over a period of time, you will be successful. Okay, let's jump into the topic of content management systems. So what are we measuring here, right? What's the goal? We want to have pieces published. It's really important, right? Let's say you write blog posts and they're all in Google Docs. As long as they're not published, they do nothing for you, right? And we see a lot of clients that are quite fearful. Let's say they have a few articles produced internally, but they want every article to be perfect. Like they have two different pieces from two different software engineers, right? And then they want to adjust tonality that both of them sound the same way, or they're not 100% sure, does this really provide value to the reader? Really, this is especially at the beginning, publishing and creating a pulse and an expectation is more important than the perfect article, right? And so you really want to get the content out. You don't need 5 revisions, right? You can always, once the article is published and you see there's some mistake in there, you can go in and edit it, right? And then it's like it seems so scary, but really the important thing at the beginning is to internally build that muscle, keep accountable to the dates that you set that you want to publish, and publish. There's no need for being so scared about having to have the perfect article, because one single article is not our strategy. It's how multiple articles together are coordinated and orchestrated in a way that helps us achieve our end goal of driving leads and driving business for the revenue for the business, right? So it's really important that you can reliably publish content to attract more new people to your news sites, and that even non-technical team members don't have friction. They can easily create, preview, and publish content, right? And so what we usually recommend is building with a static site generator and having a headless CMS. So we usually recommend Next.js and Netlify, but there's tons of solution. And so Robin, who's in the chat, and you might have noticed he is providing helpful material. I'm sure we'll right now send you the link to jamstack.org, where you can find a directory about all different kinds of solutions. But really, we usually recommend Next.js and Netlify. A lot of the common problems and challenges that you might run into have been solved, and they are, pre-solved solutions that you can copy paste, right? So that's what we usually go for. And especially because this setup also allows for implementing the best practices. And so what are those best practices? I'm actually going to have a dedicated webinar about on-page SEO best practices and also in the age of AI. But really, just to keep it short here, right? You want to have the flexibility in your CMS to have custom meta title, meta descriptions, and have, especially now with AI overviews, have like very specific schema markup is super important to get into those AI overview citations, right? Because it's really important that we structure our page in the code in a way that machines can easily understand what is happening on the page, right? And so stuff like this is very important. As mentioned, I'm going to have a dedicated webinar around that, but it's also really important to adhere to the core Web Vitals. You might have heard of those, the Google Core Web Vitals. And so why is this important? So this basically means, right, the page needs to load fast. And if you come to the page, no design should jump around and all of these things. And so why is this so important? Well, if you adhere well to the core Web Vitals, you will get preferential treatment in search engine rankings. And so why is that? Because what the core Web Vitals try to do is to, in a programmatic way, understand if your page is good, right? And so, and if it provides value to the reader, because imagine this scenario, right? I'm a searcher, I go to a search engine, I type in a search query. What do I expect? The thing that the search engine shows me as a result needs to be relevant to the thing that I searched, right? Obviously. But then also, once I click on a result that the search engine showed me, it's really important that that page loads fast, and what is on that page is the thing I'm expecting as a searcher. Because if I click on a result on the search engine results page, and then the page takes 10 seconds to load, I click away, and I'm not pissed at, the company that like published this blog post or something like that, right? I'm pissed at Google. Why did Google show me this result? And so Google wants to avoid that, or any kind of search engine obviously wants to avoid that. So they have this core Web Vitals that make pages, adhere to those best practices so that searchers, when they land on the page, have the best possible experience. And then also what you want to think about when you publish content and with your content management thing, hey, do you want to publish on a subdirectory or subdomain? So we clearly recommend subdirectory. We always have, but especially in the AI era, it's even more important because domain authority and topical authority influence how the AI systems evaluate the credibility of your content. So the more content you have on the same domain that's around the same topics, the better that is for you. And so by keeping all your technical content on your main domain, you consolidate those authority signals, and that helps both with traditional SEO, but also in the AI era. And again, it's important to be able to publish and analyze and report the content performance consistently. So a good CMS can also help with that, obviously, right? How many articles did we publish this month? Stuff like that. And so what if you already have a blog setup? So this is a tricky one, right? So first of all, if you publish on Medium or Dev.to or something like that, really that's not what we're talking about here, because as mentioned, it's about building domain authority and topical authority. And so if you post on Dev.to, this might be a great community, but really it doesn't help your company's website and domain a lot. So you should work on building up your own domain, but you can use those third-party platforms, for example, for teaser articles, where you then link over to the full article that is on your own domain. It's just always important to, point the canonical URL on Dev.to, for example, to the original article that's on your own domain. This might be getting a bit technical. Again, I'm going to have a dedicated webinar about on-page SEO best practices in the future. But yeah, then it's really about, can you follow those best practices that I just outlined with your current setup? Is your current CMS lightweight and flexible enough? Stick with it. But if not, I highly recommend the switch. What does lightweight mean? So let's say you use HubSpot and you use the HubSpot blog. I like HubSpot, right? But HubSpot injects a lot of JavaScript, and for a lot of stuff that they inject, you cannot pick and choose on which page to inject which JavaScripts. They just do it everywhere, which makes the page bloated, heavier in terms of file size, which makes the page load faster, which affects the core web vitals, because one of those core web vitals is how fast does your page load. So you might have, I have everything in HubSpot and I get all of these nice extra insights, but at the same time, your page loads faster, so you don't rank well, right? So you all have to consider these things. And personally, what we always recommend is just like, go for a very fast website with very good markup structure, with highly flexible meta tag setups, because that's what's going to help you in the long run rank well. Okay, let's talk about analytics. So what are we measuring here? So we want to measure basically the unique visitors to our domain per month. We also probably want to have a look at the average time on page. Just like, did somebody click and it wasn't at all what they expected, and after 2 seconds they left? Well, that's not good traffic, right? We want to get good traffic to our website. And we also want to measure search impressions. We can do this with Google Search Console. I'm going to talk about it in a second. And we want to measure the citations in these AI overviews, right? And really, why do we look at these things? So first of all, right, that's something we can report to business leadership. Hey, is this growing over time, right? Line goes up and to the right, always nice. But really, it's about us getting insights. What types of content that we publish resonate with our audience, and learning what to double down on and what didn't really work, right? And so, are the people going to the pages that we publish? Are they actually staying on the page and consume what we publish? And, we also see, where are they from? Is it our location where we think, I don't know, they have, this is the location our sales team targets in this year, for example, right? And then it's really important to have analytics set up, right? What we can measure, we can learn about. And so it's all about, again, understanding the audience better and providing value over time. What appeals to them, what drives traffic for us, and what has impact on the business. And so, I always recommend here, keep it simple. Google Analytics has been around for a long time. It's tried and tested. There are many things you can do, many tutorials if you run into a problem, right? You can also implement it via the Google Tag Manager, which I recommend, but it's not a must. And, I digress here, but maybe Robin will send something in the chat potentially. And then you also want to have Google Search Console for additional insights. And so really, as mentioned, we want to track the unique users, the time on page, and the search impressions. And in the AI era, we want to track specifically traffic that comes from AI search engines like, Perplexity or Claude or out of the ChatGPT chat, right? And so there's a really good a tutorial by Ahrefs that Robin can link you to, where it's super prescriptive. It sounds complicated. You need to create a new channel group and, filter, set up a regex filter and stuff like that. But really, just copy paste what's in this tutorial and you have this set up in 2 minutes. The thing about the other AI error metric, though, is the SERP placement in AI overviews. So how often do you actually show up in AI overviews? And also here, I would recommend using Ahrefs, but other solutions also work. There's SEMrush, other providers totally work. I personally just, I'm a fan. I've been using it for a long time. I really like Ahrefs, and everything that I could ever imagine that I want to get insights to, I can get with this product. So that's why I recommend it. And so, right, I said, once we can measure something, we can learn from it. And so it's also tempting, right, to then immediately set goals, which I think is a good, next thought here. But keep in mind, once we start measuring, of course, we're thinking about setting goals, but it's really hard to set realistic goals at the beginning. Over time, we will understand better what our benchmark is, right? But it so depends on your already existing setup what your goal should be, right? So for example, has your domain and your company been around for 10 years, but you just didn't do any content marketing? Well, you've got a huge advantage because your domain has been around for a long time. There's enough domain trust. And when you publish something, it gets picked up easier, right? Do you have a huge existing audience that you can all just point to your blog, for example, right? How large is the industry size and how large is your brand, right? That all plays so much into it. So it's really hard to set realistic goals at the beginning. So, I always say like, goals are aspirational, but really it's more about expectation settings. So if we set a goal, we really want to hit it. It's an expectation. But here at the beginning, it's really hard to be precise. So it's all about at the beginning, just, as mentioned, build that muscle, keep publishing, and over time you will understand what is our baseline, and then from there on do the next step, and then start setting goals that are actually quite, meaningful, I would say is the right word here. So the important thing really is you have to stick with it, right? So we recommend at least 6 months of consistent output, and then you will be able to see some impact of what you're doing, right? So it takes about 2 to 3 months to be picked up in AI overviews and about 6 months to see the whole thing we're trying to do here, right? This is the powerful thing will happen then, which is this guaranteed base safety net of traffic to your website. So how does this happen, right? We're publishing content. If you work with an agency like us, it's, we can walk you through which content you should publish and why, and we can produce it for you, right? But you can all do this internally yourself if you want, right? But basically, if you research what your audience is searching for a lot, and then you adhere to all of the best practices, and you write really good content, and you publish really good content, that means you will rank well. And so then the calculation is simple, right? A certain amount of people are searching for this every month. You're high up there in the rankings. There is a subset of people clicking through to your site. And if you publish content long enough, that means you will build this safety net, and then we have this base guaranteed level of traffic to our website, and that's the traffic we work with in the next step. So here's a somewhat recent example. This is what we set up for a client in the last year. So you can see started basically in February, and then in August we are at this point where, okay, on one day we had 165 clicks, and it's like without any. This is like from Google Search Console, so this is all organic traffic, right? So this is just our content that we now have live published that works well for us in the background, working for us. So now we get this guaranteed amount of traffic in every day. Let's say 100 people click to our blog posts, right? So what's the next step? Now we have this guaranteed traffic, right? We want to collect leads in the database. So what does this actually mean, right? The key measurement here is leads in the database. And that means first name, last name, and email address. If you want, go just with first name and email address, but really it's about building a relationship with a human, right? This is not about spamming people. We want to learn what resonates with the audience and keep on giving that to them. And it's much easier if we do that, if we know their name, and if we can email them every now and then. Again, we don't want to email them 8 times in 5 days or something like that, right? It's about, hey, we think we publish interesting stuff on our blog. Every now and then we publish an ebook or a guide or a webinar, right? So we email these people. But it's not about, oh my God, now I have their email address because they signed up to a newsletter and our sales team says, do you want to buy our most expensive product on the most expensive plan? Right? The user journey and this lead is not in the right intent stage for doing that, right? So we want to really respectfully over time build the trust, build the respect, so that when the time is right, when they are in the right intent stage, they will pick us over our competitors, right? And so this is all about turning anonymous traffic, right? This guaranteed base layer of traffic that we get every month, thanks to our content pieces, and turn them into known names in our database. Have a name, have an email address that we can then start building a relationship with. And so what do you need to do? Well, you need to set up a CRM. And we, as mentioned before, I like HubSpot, but the price point might be very daunting for you. Let's say you're a small team, or even you're in a large company, but this is a new initiative that you have been tasked with. And so you're still unsure about your budget. You really don't know how much you can spend or will be able to spend, right? So we usually recommend MailChimp or Kit for people just getting started because it does all the things it needs to do, and it's at an extremely low price point. So there's really no excuse to not set something up like this, because you can get it for really cheap. And right, it's all about just, we want to collect people's names in a database, and we want to be able to set up forms so we can collect those names and email addresses in our database. And so once we have that capability, it's all about, getting people to submit those forms. And so what do we do there, right? I mean, of course, the easiest thing here is just to have them sign up for a newsletter, right? But there are many other things, and especially with the technical audience, it's really important. Again, I keep on, hitting this point, to provide value. So what is intriguing to a technical audience, right? Of course, if we consistently publish good content, a newsletter is that. But also, right, can we, gate benchmarking tools or security checklists or interactive sandboxes that they can experiment in? And for that, they need to provide us their email address, right? So, I often also have clients saying like, this whole like approach with having people fill out the forms and stuff like that. It's like, developers don't download PDFs, and they don't even see the forms because of JavaScript blockers, and they never give their real email address anyways. True, that's a subset, and not just of developers, of people, I would say, right? But there's a lot of people out there, and the world is a big place. And I can tell you from experience, from over hundreds of customers that we have helped, and like having implemented this for the last, 15 years, you will get good leads with this. And there are developers that fill out forms, and there are developers that give their real email addresses. The pond is big enough to find the good fish in there, right? So really, if we build something that's creating value, we want to build something that's worth it to those people to give their real email address and to provide their details. Because I mean, I totally get it, right? It's like, they are providing their email address. We are now allowed to go into the inbox. That's it's like, do I really want to do this? Of course, there's some friction there, but if we have something that's good enough and really intriguing enough, they'll do it. I mean, lots of people do it. And so what should you do here actually, right? You need to define for you what a lead means, but again, keep it simple. First name, last name, or even just first name and email address. But we want to have an email address and be able to have a name that we can send this to, right? Our emails to. Again, don't spam people. Don't treat them poorly. Not just our audience, not just software engineers, just people in general, please. Don't treat them poorly, and don't promise anything that you cannot deliver. Just be fair and nice, and over time, that pays back for sure, right? As mentioned, right, keep the value to friction ratio in mind. So don't ask 7 questions, sales qualifying questions on your newsletter form. It's like, that's not worth it to fill out the form just to be part of the newsletter, right? But you can ask more qualifying questions for an asset that's really worth it, something that helps your audience save time and is really worth it to them, right? And one important thing here is a lot of clients that we talk with, that they then basically ask us, hey, this all sounds good, but once I start collecting these people in my database, I mean, now I suddenly have all of this extra work of having to send them newsletters or staying in touch with them. And no, just because you start collecting newsletter subscribers doesn't mean you have to send newsletters to this audience immediately, right? It needs to be worth it for you as well, right? If you start engaging with them, be consistent and keep disciplines and create that pulse and that expectation of regular sense that create value over time, right? But really, if you have nobody on your team that can do this consistently, you don't have to do it when you have 50 subscribers. You don't even have to do it when you have 1,000 subscribers, right? You decide when you want to commit to getting this new extra channel that is extra work, but that is one of the most precious channels you can get, like an engaged audience in a newsletter that has a good open rate, good click-through rate, means we build something that people want, they respect us, and what we provide to them is of value to them. I mean, that's what we want, right? So let's talk about the next thing here, which is retargeting audiences. And so this is extremely powerful and a lot of fun, in my opinion, at least. Those are the things that are fun to me. What we're measuring here is the retargeting audience size. And basically, when we do retargeting, if you're not familiar with it, is basically we can cookie people that have been to our page to then serve them ads. And that is something very powerful, but also something we want to, again, use in a respectful way, right? I mean, we could just say, somebody was on our page and now for the next 1.5 years, spam them with ads. No, please don't. There are much better ways to do this, and this is where our creativity can really shine. I'm going to provide some examples here. But yeah, it can help us get leads, and it can get us really drive brand awareness. And this is, a really nice feature of this, in my opinion. So there's a few things to keep in mind. Again, if you remember, I talked about, best practices when publishing a blog post on a page. Retargeting means we are injecting scripts, and these scripts can make the page more bloated, and that means your core web vitals go down, which means you rank lower. And so be strategic of when you implement that and how you implement it, right? Don't implement all the retargeting snips at the same time, for example. Experiment first with, LinkedIn ads and then with Google ads and stuff like that, right? So keep that in mind. This is, again, right, there's pros and cons. So in any case, if you want to start doing this, install the appropriate retargeting snippets. So for example, Google or LinkedIn, and also keep in mind privacy considerations, right? I'm from Europe, so this is big here, obviously. Privacy is the big thing. So there's GDPR in Europe. There's also CCPA in California. So use cookies content solutions. Like we usually recommend CookieScript or Ayubenda, but you can find a list of consent mode partners on Google's CMP partner program page. And I think Robin has that lined up and should be able to link that to you. It's just like a big directory where you can see these like ready-made cookie consent solutions that you can implement. And so be smart when implementing this and building audiences, but this is where it gets so much fun. So let me walk through a quick example here, right? You can basically think about, okay, let's publish blog posts. And let's say you have a blog and there's multiple technologies that you talk about, right? And so you can just in your URL have the word Ruby or Python for these blog posts. And let's say you have 8 blog posts that talk about Python and you have 4 that talk about Ruby. Well, we can set up a retargeting audience that captures all the traffic that went to URLs that include the word Python. So now we know the people in that audience are people that are interested in Python-related content and material, and probably that's their tech stack, or at least what they're trying to build with, right? And so that is very powerful. And I'm going to walk through an example of how this actually very specifically can look like in a second. But also, those are included audiences, but you can also set up exclude audiences. And again, these help us to be respectful with our audience and really avoid sending ad impressions when we don't really need to, because what we wanted them to do, they already did. And one thing I can also tell you, right, again, keep in mind when you inject that script, it bloats your page more. But even if you don't have a budget for it yet, or even if you don't know which ads you want to serve to your retargeting audiences, you can set up the tracking of it, and you can start building your audience in the background, right? So if you set it up today, you don't need to set up ads. You don't need to have graphics for banners or anything. It just runs in the background and it starts building up that audience. So once you're ready to execute on serving ads, the audience is ready-made and you're not starting at point 0 where you have to wait until the audience fills up, right? And so 2 things here. Brand recognition and capturing leads. So brand recognition, this is one of my favorite things to do with retargeting audiences. And in like on June 5th, so like in 2 weeks' time, I have specifically, I'm going to host a webinar about creating content that resonates with your technical audience. And so I'm going to talk about what types of content we can publish and which specific goals these content types achieve for us. But basically, just imagine the following, right? We have a retargeting snippet on our page. So we are collecting traffic that comes to our page. And so one of our articles that we published gets picked up on Hacker News or on Lobsters or is on like pretty high up on some Reddit subreddit, right? Suddenly, a lot of people come to our page. They read the article and they leave. They might not even know who we are. They don't know what we do. They might not even have looked at the logo, right? They read the article, it provided value to them, they left. But with retargeting ads, we now have these people in our retargeting audience. And so what we can do is we set up a very simple ad that just is our logo and our tagline. What do we do, right? So all of these people that were on our page that read the article will now see ads that show our logo and a short tagline of what we do. So for example, I can tell in my own company, my company was CodeShip, and we did continuous integration and delivery in the cloud. And as mentioned, we had around 90,000 unique visitors per month to the blog. We had retargeting audiences for these people that went to the blog but had not yet downloaded any of our lead magnets. These people would see simply our CodeShip logo and below it, continuous integration and delivery in the cloud. And so that was over time, right? As people see the logo and the tagline multiple times. And so whenever they then later on think about continuous integration and delivery, at least they know, CodeShip does it, right? And that's just from those retargeting ads. And here's the powerful thing. The impressions of the retargeting ads are free. So all of this brand awareness is completely free. Only when people click on the banner do we have to pay for it. But if they click on the banner, they might be interested in learning more, right? And checking out more. So that's a good thing as well. But this is the powerful thing. And again, I'm going to talk about this in my next webinar on June 5th, but we're trying to engineer for having specific content types that we publish. And some of them we try to make into like to get into multiplicators like Hacker News, like into tech newsletters. So then we get a bunch of traffic on one day, one spike of traffic, right? And that traffic we capture and then we retarget. And so the second thing we can do next to brand awareness is capture leads from previous blog visitors. So again, what we can do is people went to blog posts, for example, every blog post that had the word Python in it, we create an ebook, a guide, a tutorial that's all about Python, and we put it behind a form. People have to submit the form to get it, right? So of course, our ads, when we build a Python ebook, we want to send those ads to everybody that's in the retargeting audiences of traffic that went to pages that had Python in the URL. Because why would we send that ad to somebody that went to pages that have Ruby in the URL? It's not relevant to them. It doesn't serve any purpose to them. They will be weirded out, confused why we do that, right? So again, it's about anticipating what the user needs or the lead needs and being respectful and where possible, give to them what they want, right? And so the same thing applies to once they then downloaded the asset, they are now a lead in our database. So great, we have achieved what we wanted to do with this like whole setup, right? So what we should have is we should have a dedicated thank you page for this Python ebook. And that thank you page is our exclude audience for the retargeting ad that we serve to people that went to any blog post that had Python in the URL. Because what it means now is any person that has Python, a visitor page with Python in the URL is in our retargeting audience, but we will not serve impressions to people that went to the thank you page because we know they're already a lead in our database because they did the thing we wanted them to do, right? So this is extremely powerful, and you can be more creative if you want later in the Q&A. We can talk about more creative ways to set up retargeting audiences, but this is really fun. And it's fun because it works. You can be respectful, and it's a good thing. So here's just a quick, super basic thing how this could look like. Excuse me, this might be a little blurry on your end, but basically this is just like retargeting audience for show me all blog visitors, and then show me all visitors that have not yet downloaded an ebook. And so you can see the bottom retargeting audience here is everybody that's ever been to any thank you page, right? So we're not very granular here. We're just doing the bare minimum to try to be respectful and serve impressions where they really make sense. So this is just any kind of thank you page, not even for that specific Python ebook, for example. Cool. Okay, next one. Last point from the agenda before we get into the Q&A. So you want to create a content calendar. And so this is just like with the CMS. People are like, man, this is so simple. Why is he talking about this? But what we want to measure here is content pieces being published per month. But really, what this thing allows us to do is being predictable, staying accountable, and being able to report to the business our successes, basically. This is all about acting and not reacting, and being able to see in the future and plan ahead. So let's talk for this, right? Again, I'm a big proponent of, just like with attribution models, really, good enough is good enough. This is not rocket science. This doesn't have to be absolutely amazing. I usually, it's my personal preference is Trello with the calendar power-up, but you can do it in Airtable, you can do it in Asana, use a simple spreadsheet, use Google Calendar if you want. It's really not that important. I just really like Trello because, you have the cards, you can assign team members, you can have template cards, all of this good stuff, right? And so the goal here is to create predictability and accountability, and to have an easy way to report to the business what has happened and what will happen, right? And also over time, you will learn, looking back at which pieces you published and looking at your analytics setup, what works, what drives traffic, which pages help us create most leads, right? And so it's really important that accountability here is the big thing, right? It's really important at the beginning to reverse engineer what you think you can achieve and use placeholders. So, you might say, oh, in our company, one software engineer, he or she was super nice, and she says she's willing to create content for our marketing team. Great. Let's put placeholders into our Trello content calendar, in my case, right? And build out this content buffer. So this is super important. What do I mean by this, right? Let's say you have the capacity to publish twice a month. That means you can create, in one quarter, you will publish 6 articles. Put that into the content calendar. Just type placeholder if you want. If you don't know the topics yet, just keep yourself accountable to publish on those days. So every 2 weeks, you publish something, right? And so if you do that, what that means is you need to have 6 articles created from the nice and helpful software engineer in your company in order to buy yourself 1 quarter to create the next 6 articles, right? And so, again, this is about predictability and accountability. And where this will help so much is the following. So let's say we have done this for 6 months, as mentioned earlier, right? And we have our base net of traffic that we get. And so let's say 100 people per day are coming to our pages every day. That means about 3,000 people per month come to our pages. And so then we also know in our CRM, right, we have this one Python ebook. Hey, we per month, we get around 30 people that download this Python ebook. Great. So of course, this is not a linear, predictive thing, but you could then say, hey, if we get 6,000 people to the blog, it's highly likely we will get more leads not just the same 30, because the traffic that comes to the blog post that have the Python ebook as a call to action, that then link to the landing page of the Python ebook, which has the form, which turns that traffic from the blog into a known name and a lead in our database, right? There is like a correlation. More traffic means to the blog post means more traffic to the landing page, means more people submit the form. So if we know, for example, okay, we publish an article every other week, we get this amount of traffic. Well, if we double that and we publish an article every week, we should see more traffic, which means we should see more leads. And that is something that we can tell business leadership or whoever has decision power over the budget and say, look, we've built this base proof of concept. We get the traffic, we get the leads. Now we want to scale this. Can you give me more internal resources? If not, right, oftentimes the software engineers, they need to work on product. They need to, I mean, that's why agencies like ours exist, right? Draft.dev helps you create technical content because usually the software developers in your company, even if they are willing, they don't have the time to help you create that content. So we help you get that content produced. So the whole thing I'm explaining here can then work for you. And the nice thing is, once it's set up, it works in the background, right? Once you have those guaranteed 3,000 people, you have this guaranteed 30 leads per month. It's not that you can fully lean back and never update this content, but really for a long, long time, this will happen. So you can focus on the next thing, which gets you to 6,000, which hopefully gets you to 60 leads. And then you can be really smart about, what increases our conversions. So maybe we should have a Ruby ebook because we can see in our analytics next to the Python URLs, the most visited URLs are the Ruby URLs. So let's create a Ruby guide or ebook and use that ebook on all of the Ruby blog posts, because obviously that has a better conversion rate. And suddenly the conversion rate from traffic to leads will go up, right? And so this thing, the content calendar sounds so simple, but in combination with the analytics, with the CRM, where we can see the leads coming in, allows us to get the time and the budget from leadership to keep on executing on this and ideally get more people working on this, right? So this is why this is so powerful. And it helps us basically schedule ahead and orchestrate the distribution and promotion waves. So think about it like this. We know, like in my company, again at CodeShip, we published 4 articles per week, and we had a content buffer for 2 months ahead. So I mean, you can calculate what that is. It's a big number. Like we had many content pieces basically ready and scheduled in our CMS, and I knew today what goes out in 2 months, and it is already prepared. That's how far ahead we had our content buffer with 4 articles published per week. And when you have that, the cool thing is, right, let's say we are in our Trello content calendar, we see the blog post that should go out, let's say, next Tuesday. We know what it is. We know the URL. So we can also already schedule our social media promotion around that because we know what the article is about. It's scheduled in our CMS. We know the URL, so we can just write the social media promo and schedule it, even though the thing is not live, because we know it will be live when the social media post goes out, right? And so building that buffer basically buys you the time to then produce the next things while the first things are scheduled and going out over time, right? And so it's really important to put placeholders in the calendar, stick to it, and commit to it, even if you don't know the topics. Again, an agency like ours can help you define the topics based on research and, like community research and all of this nice and good stuff. But even if you have no idea what should be published, if you say you want to start with content marketing, let's say you commit to having a blog post on your blog every other week, that's the minimum I would recommend. Every 2 weeks, you should publish something and create that pulse and that internal muscle and accountability, right? Put the placeholders in there, and then over time, you will get better at it, or you will come to Draft.dev and we help you produce that stuff, right? But really, it's important to establish the pulse and that accountability internally. And I'm telling you, it's a thing of beauty if you then go into your content calendar and you scroll back into the past and you see all the things that got published, and it all was orchestrated so nicely, and the person that schedules social media has it all done, and the person that schedules the internal newsletter has a, it's the same thing, not just with social media. The newsletter is the same thing. If you know what's going to get published next month, you can already set up the newsletter for next month with the URL to that content piece, to that ebook, for example, that you plan to publish, or to the 3 blog posts that you publish, right? And so this is why this is so powerful. And again, this is what I said in the very beginning of this webinar. This is why it's a system and processes. And if you stay disciplined, it opens up so many things because the friction is gone. You can act and not react. You can plan ahead. Hey, it seems like our audience is really more interested in the Python stuff than the Ruby stuff. So the next 12 articles we're gonna work on are all about Python. Let's create a second ebook, or let's create like a dev environment with a playground that's all for the Python users, because that seems to work best for us, right? And so it's not inspiration strikes and super gun ho, I need to get this out, and you have 2 engineers that give you something on the same day, and you have 2 articles that you can publish on the same day, and then nothing for 3 months, right? It's stick to the plan, build a content buffer, be disciplined, be consistent, and stay accountable, right? So that's what it's about. So in short, try to figure out your current capacity and reverse engineer how much you can produce, and that stick to that. And once you have this content ready, then start publishing. Only then start publishing. And all of the scheduled articles give you the time to produce the next articles, basically. So here's just a super quick thing. How would this look like, right? On the left, you can see these are just the placeholders that we're committing to. And then on the right hand, you can see, for example, a client that publishes 4 times in that 1 week, 3 times per week, right? And so good content strategy takes time. You will not from the get-go publish 4 articles per week, right? And it's over time you develop this feeling of, your base level of traffic. That's your benchmark data. Then you can set good goals. You understand better what your audience is intrigued by, and so that's what you work on more, because again, you want to provide value over time and engage with them and be helpful and really give them things that are helpful to them in their job, right? Or also in their free time, right? And so this is all such fun stuff, and we haven't even talked about funnel stages and intent stages yet, and how to nudge people from one intent stage to the next stage via the content that you have, and interlinking the backlinks between different blog posts that are on your domain and all of this stuff. There's so much cool stuff still to do. But once you have this is the really powerful stuff where you have your base level of traffic that you can turn into leads, or leads can be leads in the product, like signups for the product. It could be MQLs that turn into SQLs that talk to a sales team, right? All of this stuff. And again, for all of this stuff that I just mentioned, with nudging people down one stage further and then getting them to product sign up, for example, we can do this in a really structured way with clear processes. It's a lot of fun. So I'm excited to talk about this more in the upcoming webinars. But yeah, for now, that is it. So let's open up the Q&A. Before I do that, though, I just want to mention again, Robin is in the chat. I assume he has sent you a lot of nice resources about what I talked about, but he'll also make sure to tomorrow send you a recording of this webinar, send you the slide deck and all the resources that he has posted in the chat. We will have that available in our follow-up webinar. And so, yeah, I really encourage you to start setting up something like what I just talked about. If you have internal subject matter experts, by all means utilize them, and I hope they're willing, and I hope you get them as a resource to work for you, right? And I hope they're excited to work with the marketing team. But if that is not the case, or if they are not consistent and predictable in their output enough, to always feel free to write with us. You can see here we have a lot of experience. We have a lot of writers. We have software engineers. All of our content is written by practicing software engineers with an average of over 10 years experience in the industry, worked with large companies, Amazon, JP Morgan, all of that good stuff. But for now, yeah, let's start the Q&A, and I'm excited and hope to see you in the next webinar on June 5th, which is about creating content that actually resonates with your technical audience. So yeah, let me open up the Q&A panel here and see what we have here. Julia asks, what are your thoughts on Webflow for CMS? So I've seen more and more people use Webflow, and it's a good page builder, and there's some customizability in terms of, for example, if you get custom modules, you can set up those custom meta tags and meta titles and stuff like that. But also there are some things, sadly, that a Webflow loads into the page globally. And what I mean by that is like the specific scripts, styling scripts, for example, right? And so I think if you're on it, you don't have to immediately switch from it, but there is a ceiling of how efficient you can make it work for you. So if you start completely new, I would not recommend it. If you're on it, it's fine enough, but probably at some point you will want to switch away from it. And I know it's tough because Webflow, they did a really good job with making it so non-technical people don't see a lot of friction, right? It's a good website build. It allows you to set up the landing pages. It allows you to, connect the forms to other solutions that you might be using. So yeah, it helps marketers be more efficient in publishing pages, but sadly, at some point, there's a ceiling to how efficient you can make it in terms of like taking away, removing things that help you adhere better to those core web vitals and the best practices. My personal opinion. So somebody here is asking, let's see, I have a few questions here. Somebody is saying, thank you for your point on perfect is the enemy of the good. I think this is especially important for early stage startups. Do you have any data examples to back this up that I can use to demonstrate to leadership? As a solo marketer, it can be challenging to be putting out imperfect content and leadership questions why the quality is lower. Whereas I try to communicate that getting the content out there is more important in the first place. So I agree with you, but it's extremely common, especially right now, right? If we look at the tech industry, a bunch of people sadly are losing their jobs, budgets are getting cut. So a lot of, especially the marketers that we talk with, because we also talk with product people and DevRels at Draft.dev, the marketers, a lot of their questions nowadays come out of fear. So their budget might be cut. They're really fearful in publishing something that has not been reviewed by 3 internal software engineers to really triple make sure that the content is correct. So let's say we provide something for them, right? They want to have multiple revision rounds internally and then come back to us. And that is painful for everybody involved. So for us, right? But also for the marketer. And I agree with you. Sadly, I don't have a name here. But the important thing here is to be able to explain to leadership how it is more important to not have a single content piece that goes viral. It's how multiple content pieces work in orchestration on the same goal. And so they don't need to be perfect. I don't mean that they don't have to be factually correct, right? The worst thing that can happen is that there's like a factual error in the code or something like that, and then you lose all the respect of the technical audience that you actually want to provide value to, right? So of course, if you're a marketer and you don't have that technical background, it's very scary to then publish something that you yourself, the agency Draft.dev told you this is good content, but really, wouldn't it be good for at least 1 or 2 people on our team to also look over that? And the answer is, if they can be fast, by all means do that. But really, it's about how multiple pieces are working together. And so that pulse, especially at the beginning, but even later on, is more important than having only perfect articles. Because again, it's about how the backlinking between the articles work, how one article pushes somebody further down in the intent stage or towards an asset. And if you think about it like that, how can you actually prove the ROI to business leadership is, okay, you have analytics, so you can see the traffic, right? And then you can see how many leads that created. And then, for example, if your company has a sales team, you can also see how many sales qualified leads have been created. So that's just some qualification criteria on the forms, for example, right? I don't know. How many engineers does your company have? 200? Okay, that goes over to the sales team because that could be a large company, right? With about 2,000 employees, for example. So they have a lot of money. So a human, a sales rep, should talk to the lead. Whereas if your lead that fills out the form for the Python ebook says, well, my company has one engineer, that's me, I'm the solo founder in this startup project, right? Then a human sales rep shouldn't talk with this person because the human sales rep costs time. And this person is much better just let's get them into our newsletter, nurture them over time. And when the time is right and they have enough budget, then we send them over to the sales lead. But I digress. If we have the SQL, so the sales qualified leads, right? We have the traffic, we have the marketing qualified leads, we know their name and their email address. Then we have some qualification criteria. For example, they have 200 engineers in the company. That's an SQL. And the SQL suddenly is now in the sales funnel. In the sales funnel, we have, I don't know, 10 SQLs came in that came from content and that generated 3 opportunities. And one opportunity turned into a closed won deal. And that closed won deal has dollars as a metric, right? We know the dollar amount of that closed won deal. And if we have many of those, we know an average. And we know on average, 1 in 3 opportunities closes. We know on average 10 SQLs create 3 opportunities, and we know on average 10 SQLs come out of 50 MQLs, and we know on average 50 MQLs come out of 8,000 unique visitors to the blog. And that's how we reverse engineer, right? And again, we don't need crazy attribution for that. We just need to see in the sales funnel, did this person come from one of the assets that we provided, or did they come via the playground sandbox area, right? That's the thing. So this is where the powerful reverse engineering happens. Okay, we now can prove that this closed won deal had its first touch point via content marketing. And again, it's not because this was the perfect article. It is because that was one article that had a call to action to an asset, like the Python ebook, for example, right? That then we realized is an SQL and then became an opportunity, right? So yes, it is hard to convince business leadership that not everything needs to be perfect. But if you I sent them the recording to this video, the whole thing is that it is not about every now and then publishing a perfect asset. It is about having that muscle of consistently publishing content where you create topical authority with multiple pieces around the same topic, and then topical authority with multiple pieces around another topic, right? And then your whole domain gets more trusted around these topics, which means you rank better. Or even if it's an AI overview, right, you might not rank, but people come to your website and just organically, via the backlinks that we orchestrate in those articles, we nudge them down to that asset, which again is what I'm talking about in the next webinar on June 5th. So I hope there's a long-winded way to responding. I'm just saying you're not alone. We see this situation happen. And what usually helps is if we get the decision maker to understand the whole strategy that I just talked about. Cool. I see another question here from Chase. You talked about some other creative ways of retargeting. Can you mention some? Yes. So especially for technical audiences, right? So I talked about the words in the URL and capturing that audience like that and then providing the right asset. What can be really helpful for like PLG companies is, if you have a product that's for technical audiences, of course, very good documentation is very important. And so you can start building these audience segments of where they visited in the documentation. So if they were at some point where they were close to actually implementing it, you can serve them different ads than if they were not in the documentation at all, right? Or again, if you allow for multiple different tech stacks to be implemented, like looking at the documentation traffic and then having a dedicated call to action dependent on which documentation pages they visited can also be very powerful. Another one is like things like, let's say you have like a sign-in button in your navigation bar, and then they end up on a landing page that has, OAuth, like sign up with GitHub, whatever, right? But they don't. Well, these people had an initial intent to sign up, but they might have been, not getting the sign-in option that they want, but they had an intent to sign up. So there's not really a need anymore to just do the super generic what is, for example, like what is CodeShip, continuous integration and delivery in the cloud, because you already know they had the intent to sign up, but something on that page then made them think twice, basically. So let's see. There's one more question here in the Q&A. An anonymous user, so sadly I don't know your name, says, we recently changed our blog from a black background to a white background, and I was questions as to why I did that, because black is trendy. However, I heard that black background for content can affect SEO. Is this purely a design-related preference, or does the color of the background affect SEO? So I have not heard about that, but what I could imagine where this is going is there are some metrics that search engines are looking for in terms of the readability of the page. So for example, and again, I have a webinar coming up about on-page SEO. If you have things like, a picture says more than 1,000 words, right? So if you have an intro image that explains what this article is about, let's say like an architecture diagram, for example, that is better than having no picture at all. It's the same thing if you have many paragraphs and like bolded stuff and block quotes and stuff like that. That's what search engines like to see. And if you say there was a black background, what I could imagine is that this is about accessibility and contrast. So let's say you have a black background and then you have a very dark font, for example, and not a lot of other delineating design elements that have good contrast, then in terms of accessibility, that would provide a low score. And if you have a low score, that impacts your SEO. But without knowing the details about your specific situation, sadly, I can't respond more clearly, but that is something that might be what's happening here. Cool. I see no other questions in the Q&A panel. So I think I'm gonna stop for now. As mentioned, we have another webinar coming up on June 5th, which builds upon this one. Robin can link you the URL to that registration page in the chat, and it will also be in our follow-up email, obviously, because again, what I'm talking about, one webinar builds upon the next, but also you can watch them standalone. They also will provide value if you watch them standalone. But this will much more be about, okay, we now have the capability to publish technical content. What content should we produce? This means which topics, but also with which purpose. Again, remember when I talked about like being featured in a newsletter or being on the front page of Hacker News and getting that spike of traffic. We're going to talk about all of that, how to orchestrate that, and how to utilize the traffic that we get from these different ways that we publish the content. But yeah, for now, thanks for joining today and have a nice day. And I hope to see you on June 5th. See you soon. This was fun. Bye-bye.